Now, let's talk about endurance. We talked a little bit about it, but endurance versus stubbornness. Now, what's the difference between that? Well, of course, being able to endure is one of the most important core values. And it's also the fourth promise of a researcher of truth. To endure patiently, without complaining, all forms of trials and tribulations, that the most wise divine law may bestow upon us. So this is really a call for a seeker to develop endurance. And often we become so miserable because we can't endure something. How many times have you said or heard, I can't stand that person. I can't tolerate that person. So instead of making a big effort to endure the challenging situation, the tendency is to make a big effort to avoid that situation that are calling for endurance. This is so common today. So really, endurance is another secret of having success in the material world and the spiritual world. An enduring person is guaranteed success. A person without endurance, no matter what their education or qualifications, seems to be blocked from success. So endurance means to be able to stand things not in line with our own way of thinking and expectations. The lack of endurance is the biggest common problem amongst friends, spouses, families, nations. So developing this core value is an exercise. It's an exercise that strengthens our willpower. It's endurance that makes all things, great and valuable. Some of the most valuable material things are valued because they have endured over time. Great artifacts from antiquity, gold and silver. You could take a cheap $20 watch and bury it in the sand, and somebody digs it up in 2,000 years, it's become great value because it's endured over time. And it's the same with all great people. No matter what their mission was, they prove their greatness by their ability to endure. Because our spiritual journey is much longer than anyone has told us until now. The number of incarnations is much greater than anyone has told us until now. And the number of spiritual tests and trials and tribulations is much greater than we have understood by now. And all this is really vital to develop this core value of endurance. And really it's patience and endurance, or patient endurance we could say, is the best defense against tribulations, trials and tribulations. But we talked about how these core values and the golden keys interact. In order to be endure, you have to concentrate. You have to use the key of concentration to do that. And so we must go through these long stages of initiation that prepare us for the next levels of consciousness. We have to be patient, endure all that with faith, knowing that whatever's happening to us right now, however challenging, however disagreeable it may be to our personality, it's in our best interest. Because all of these life situations are really nothing more than tests. Tests to expose the false as well as the real. Spiritually speaking, I guess you could say the ability to endure is one of the best signs of your spiritual progress. And there's no halfway measures. The researcher either finds himself or they lose themselves. They don't find themselves for a period of time, not forever. And it's just because that connection between the personality and the inner self. It's not the inner self that gets lost. It's the connection from our personality to the inner self that gets lost. And this is the hidden meaning in Christ's great words, who say, he who loves his self will lose his self. He who hates his life will keep it for eternity. He who loves his life means the one who only loves his earthly life of its present-day personality, which has been mistaken for the life of the soul, because sooner or later it will be lost, because the present-day personality is not the real self. And the life of the personality will end one day, but the life of the soul is eternal. He who hates his life, it says, means they no longer care so much about that personality's little temporary life. They're not so deeply attached to it anymore. So they are the ones who stand to gain their real life, the soul life, which means reaching soul self-awareness. But don't mistake stubbornness for endurance. Don't mistake stubbornness for real willpower. Egoism is a stubborn adversary that blocks our way to real endurance, real willpower, and real life. And people make this mistake to think the stubbornness of their egoism is their real power, is the real willpower. But it's really more a won't power. It's true. It's just, I won't do that. Or I'm so stubborn I won't accept anything but what I think. Although it's good to set something firmly in your mind and insist on it, but without flexibility, without being open to adjust your ideas in the moment, it really ends up becoming egoistic stubbornness. If their egoism tells them to just, no, you set the plan, you must manifest, you've got to go this way. It would be the same as saying, okay, I'm going to ride a bicycle through New York City. I'm going to start at Times Square and go to Union Square. So they decide to take Broadway Street the whole way. They've set their mind they will go that way. No matter what happens, that's what they're doing. Even if a car comes in the way, they wouldn't adjust their plan. They have inflexibility to set their path to ride and will not change. Their firm resolve is not to deviate from their scheduled plan, but to manifest just exactly as they envisioned it. What would happen to that person? Well, he would encounter something more powerful than themselves in their bicycle, and they and their bike would be destroyed. But a more reasonable cyclist would adjust their plan. When a car comes their way, they would move. If the road is blocked, they would find another way. Sure, it's a small hindrance and inconvenience to their plan, but it keeps them safe. Those who stubbornly go through life saying it's this way without the ability to be flexible end up breaking themselves on life, really. And a lot of people have been very successful with that at certain levels, but you reach a point in your spiritual development where what worked before will not work in the new situation. I mean, maybe you were super successful at it. Now you've changed conditions. Now you're being taken to another level of initiation, let's say, and you will fail miserably if you don't adjust to the new conditions. So by their own power, at the end of the day, by their own power, they strike against something stronger than their personality, which is life, of course, and it shatters them because there was no room in their mind to adjust. There was no flexibility in their plan. Thus, they must necessarily break themselves to learn their lesson. Of course, this is not a complete destruction. It's just a breaking of their illusions or the rigidness. Personalities are limited, but truth is an unlimited power of life. If a person is aware of this principle, they will know when they go their way, they need to adjust, when to adjust their plans and when to stick to them, or when to take a different course. So we must check to see if we're really reasoning these things through or following unreasonable obstinacy of our egoism. As a researcher of truth, a helper, or psychotherapist, we should seriously study all this. The difference between obstinacy and real willpower. And it's like the difference between the light of a smoky candle and the light of the sun. So we need to penetrate through the illusion to find that the willpower of egotism is nothing more than obstinacy. But our real willpower is becoming from our divine nature. And behind every illusion is the truth. And we will see this by using the mind in the right way to reach the knowledge that leads to wisdom. With real willpower, we can change things. We can disenergize the bad elementals that are composing our egotism, which is expressing this optimism. Now, there's so many tricks of the egotism it tries. And one of its best tricks is to convince ourselves that it is it. It will claim to be ourself. It will answer you saying, well, I'm you. Or it refers to itself as trying to get you to believe that it's you. Now, either we would go along with this misdirection, or we say, no, you are not me. You are time and space creation. I am life, you are not life. You are a constantly changing phenomenon, because egotism is constantly changing all the time. If you can observe things like this, it gives great spiritual unfoldment, and it leads quicker to self-realization. But if you work in this way, you won't have much lasting success without connecting to this I-ness, because the limited personality just can't make it. So we have to turn and find the real I-ness to be true in ourselves. Now, when we've been using the word egotism, I should have clarified this sooner, but when we hear the word ego in our society today, everybody thinks of egoism. But the way the word ego really starts out, it's all capital letters, and it means our I-ness, our individuality. Egoism is a shadow of that individuality. It's the false self. Divine nature brings forth love and compassion and reasonable actions. But egoism is the weakness of a personality, which is the source of all dis-ease, material, psychic, emotional, or mental, in our personality, in our nature, and in the world. So when we examine these two, we realize that there's really no connection between, ego is not egoism. Ego is sane, reasonable, responsible. Ego is the insane child of ignorance. It's a group elemental misrepresenting itself as the eternal self. At times it completely takes control of the personality and contaminates the human subconsciousness. So in killing your egotism, we always talk about killing the egotism, and when we get to this point, it's called the first crucifixion. And all it is the crucifixion of your egoism. It's not the crucifixion of your personality. So when we're talking about killing the egotism, don't think we're ever killing the personality. Instead, the seemingly perishable personality will be transmuted into the real self by cleaning it of these lower emotions and desires and thoughts. In other words, we should pull out those egoistic thorns that cause pain to us and pain to others. In this way, egotism loses its place to the immortal self.
Daniel, could you explain it a little more? Because like all my life I always heard